Dr. D. Yang is an assistant professor in the Department of Transportation and Urban Infrastructure Studies at Morgan State University. He received his Bachelor's of Engineering in Traffic Engineering at Beijing Jiao Tong University and a PhD in Transportation Planning and Engineering at New York University. His research focuses on developing novel statistical and data-driven methods at the intersection of transportation safety, connected and autonomous vehicles, human factors, policy analysis, and shared mobility. Dr. Yang's research contributions have resulted in over 40 publications in peer-reviewed journals, conference proceedings, and technical reports. He was honored with the Institute of Transportation Engineers Northeastern District Daniel B. Fambro Student Paper Award in 2021. His research has received funding from organizations such as the National Science Foundation and the U.S. Department of Transportation, among others. Dr. Yang serves on the editorial advisory board of the journal Accident Analysis and Prevention, and is a handling editor for the journal Transportation Research Record, an editor of the COTA International Conference of Transportation Professionals, and a member of the Road Safety and Simulation International Conference Scientific Review Committee. His research has also been featured in New York Daily News and Government Technology. So with that long list of accolades, I'm extremely pleased to welcome to the show my friend Dr. D. Yang. Welcome, D.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for the introduction. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think there's really nobody better that we could be talking to today about our research center's response to the tragedy that was the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse earlier this year. And so I'm hoping today to have a really enriching discussion with you about kind of a broad overview of the study that you are leading as part of our cohort of research studies in response to the bridge collapse, and also kind of some ancillary bits about your research philosophy in response to moments of crisis, as well as sort of the technological applications that you have a lot of background in, namely machine learning and modeling. So I think the best place to start is just to kind of give us that 60,000-foot view of the cohort of research projects that the NTC is pursuing in response to the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, and then specifically the one that you are leading.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joe, for your kind words. So first of all, let me say that, so at the National Transportation Center and also Smarter Center in Morgan State, so this is a collaborative and joint effort. So I'm not the only person who's working on this research. So yeah, basically at the NTC and the Smarter Center, we are working on several research projects related to the Key Bridge collapse. The first one is a NSF Rapid Award. It's a National Science Foundation Award, which is a joint effort among Morgan State University, University of Maryland College Park, and also George Mason University. So I mean, I can talk more about that later, but briefly, this NSF Rapid Award focus on collecting data, specifically transportation and logistics data related to the Key Bridge collapse. For example, the traffic mobility, travel behavior changes, and also logistics and economics. And then in addition to that, with the Smarter and NTC, we are also working on a joint collaborative project that basically involves all the affiliated universities to investigate the traffic impacts and propose potential solutions to the Key Bridge collapse. Yes.
So in getting to that cohort of the three projects that you outlined, could you perhaps walk us through kind of your initial reactions to the crisis? That morning when you got a phone call or a text messages, whatever it was about the event, what were your initial reactions personally, and how did that kind of motivate you to get to this slate of research projects as a researcher and as just a concerned citizen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I first learned the collapse of Key Bridge on that very morning when it happens. I mean, as we all know that the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed, I think around like 1:30 a.m. On March 26, 2024. It is due to a cargo ship, right? That struck the Key Bridge that results in its collapse. I first learned it when I first woke up, and I saw my phone. I saw the news on that, And then the thing is, when I started reading more and more about the Key Bridge and its collapse, and I also watched a video about how it happened. So basically, I mean, I was shocked, of course. But the thing is, the more I read, the more I realized that it will probably, have significant impact to the local and also the regional transportation, perhaps. And then the involved, people may include the local residents, the commuters, the people who travel out of states. And then in terms of the area, it may contain Baltimore City or even the counties nearby, and not only in Maryland, but also the other, states in the northeastern region of the U.S. So, and that's why I decided that I think it is very important to investigate, the traffic and logistic and social economic impact of the Key Bridge collapse. So, go back to your question. My initial objective, I think, is mainly focus on collecting transportation data related to the Key Bridge collapse. And how I get there is that because we know that in transportation industry we have a lot of data right now, right? I mean, we have a lot of, as the transportation system is getting smarter and smarter, more and more data can be collected. But the thing is that not all of the data can be stored like all the time. Some of the data, transportation data, I mean, they are considered as perishable. Which means that if we, do not collect and record the data in time, we may, there's a chance that we may never get access to the data again. So because of this, we are thinking about, to have a first initial project that specifically focused on data collection. And then as the day progressed, so when the day finally started, me and Dr. Mansouri Jehani, who is the director of the Smarter Center at Morgan State, we learned that University of Maryland College Park and also George Mason University, they are also interested in doing something similar as what we're trying to do. So basically, we team up with the UMD and George Mason and decided to focus on collecting data related to the Key Bridge collapse in the DMV area because of our locations. And then which basically the data collected from this project can be later leveraged to better investigate the traffic impact of the Key Bridge collapse. So I think that is basically the moment that we decided to pursue an NSF grant for that. Yeah.
So you clearly identified the spatial scale of your study, that being predominantly the Mid-Atlantic and specifically the DMV area. And then, of course, you recognized this bit about perishable data, the fact that time was very much of the essence under these circumstances of crisis. I think that's a really good point on which we can pivot to this National Science Foundation Rapid Grant, because that's really how you were able to mobilize this idea into reality and start conducting research. So I think it would be really useful to some of the academics on the call to really lay out, okay, what is the NSF Rapid Grant and how are you able to utilize that research to begin conducting your study?
Yeah, that is great question. So, for those of you who do not know, the National Science Foundation has a particular program. It's called RAPID. So, I think there are several focuses of that program, but one of the main focuses is that it promotes those type of those research when certain, unexpected, disasters happen. And then when those disasters happen, there's often a severe urgency regarding the data collection or, type of, facilities or specialized equipment. And then, so from this perspective, for the Key Bridge collapse, it is certainly unexpected or unanticipated. And it is also considered a significant event, due to its large, impact. So, that's why we decided to pursue an NSF Rapid Award. And then basically what we did is that we follow, the procedures of the NSF. We conducted, we contacted the program director and the officer for the corresponding program. And then, we started working on the proposal. So I think the thing is that from an academic perspective, when we are starting working on the proposal, I would say that our initial objectives became, clearer and clearer as a result. Oftentimes when you start writing, you feel that your goal has become much clearer. And we decided to mainly focus on three aspects regarding the data collection of the Key Bridge. The first one is the traffic mobility data. I mean, of course, with the Key Bridge collapse, there's high chance that the mobility conditions in the nearby traffic can be affected. And the second aspect is the travel behavior data, which are basically obtained from conducting surveys. And the third aspect is logistics and social economics data. And then because this is sort of a collaborative grant, which involves 3 universities, so basically we took the divide and conquer approach, and each of the universities has its own specific goals and focuses. So the main focus of Morgan State is on conducting surveys to collect data related to the potential behavior changes as a result of the Key Bridge collapse. Yeah.
So let's focus in a bit on that second aspect, the survey portion.
Yeah.
What was sort of the logic behind trying to get that local perspective, people in neighborhoods like Dundalk and Edgemere? Talk a little bit about the physical and the social geography that you were trying to target with this survey and why you did so.
Yeah, that's also a great question. So I think like you mentioned, there are certain areas like near the Key Bridge that we would like to target. And also, it is anticipated that they can be affected by the Key Bridge collapse. So first of all, let me just say that this is still an ongoing effort and research. So what I report here, can be maybe updated later based on new responses. So that we receive. But I think I can briefly comment on what we are doing and what we have learned so far. And of course, we welcome any suggestions and feedback, for our research. So, I mean, basically, we target the local residents who either live or work near the Key Bridge. I mean, first of all, let me say that, of course, the population that are affected by the Key Bridge may not limit it to the local participants. But I mean, as the research is just getting started, we want to have a sort of a focus at the beginning, and later on we can include more people that may be affected by the Key Bridge. So basically, to the east side of the Key Bridge, we are targeting several areas, like you mentioned, including the Dundalk, Edgemere, Old Balno Heights, or even as far as Rosedale or Essex. And then on the west side of the bridge, we are targeting Brooklyn Park, Linthicum Heights, Ferndale, Glen Burnie, and just to name a few. And then in addition to this, we are also targeting the nearby cities and counties, for example, the Baltimore City and Baltimore County, Anne Arundel, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, and circle back, to one of the questions you asked in terms of, why are we seeking a local perspective? Is that, based on the historical data that we can see, is that I think there are more than 30,000, daily trips that are, generated by the Key Bridge and before it collapsed. So this is a very large amount, and a lot of them are commuters based on what we learned so far. So, with the Key Bridge collapsed, this large amount of traffic must be diverted somewhere, right? So, I mean, basically we have the following options. I mean, we have the I-695. Basically, you can use the entire I-695 to get to the other side, and that's one option. And the third and the second and the third options can be the 2 tunnels, the I-95 tunnels and also the I-895 tunnels, the Fort McHenry tunnel and the Baltimore Harbor tunnel. And another option is that we can also use the local roads in the city, the Baltimore city, to get to the other side. So, I mean, with this analysis, so we tend to see that, the local residents are mostly affected by the Key Bridge. So that's that's where we want to start. And yeah, and also want to seek the local perspective, in the affected area. And then in terms of the social demographic groups that you mentioned, I mean, of course, we are trying to target all social demographic groups, and we want to reach out to as many people as possible and to be inclusive as possible. But like I said, this is an ongoing process. We are gradually, try to get more and more responses from different groups and from different people, and to be, as inclusive as possible.
Right. Right. And you know as well as anybody how difficult it
Yeah,
is can get to get a representative sample when you're conducting
yeah,
a survey that's as
yeah,
broad as this. So I would love to
yeah.
hear a little bit more about the sort of specific methodology that you used to reach out to this groups, whether that was relying on certain kinds of personal partnerships,
Yeah.
local institutions, things like that. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, I mean, I think it is very important that we get enough samples that we want to, later can be analyzed to get meaningful results. First of all, let me say that I mean, oftentimes there are several ways, different ways we can conduct the survey. So, I mean, for example, we can, of course, distribute the hard copies of the survey flyers to people or passersby in person, right? So that way, basically, we have a better interaction with the people, and then we may be able to get them talking, and then we can get something meaningful out of the interactions. And another way is that we can distribute the service online via various channels. For example, we can use a social media post or e-newsletters or so on and so forth, right? So, and which methods to use to reach out to the particular participants who are targeted communities, I would say it depends on the type of surveys you are conducting. So, for example, for the KeyBridge research, we actually used a combination of these two channels that I mentioned, the in-person survey and the online service. So on the one hand, we want to target people who either live or work in the areas adjacent to the bridge. So we can basically what we did is that we identified certain locations that may have large volume of pedestrians in the area of the KeyBridge. For example, we identify certain plazas or shopping malls. And then we basically distributed hard copies of the survey flyers to, the people and who basically are willing to talk to us. And on the other hand, we also use the online surveys. And the purpose is that we want to target a wide range of people who are likely affected by the KeyBridge. But so, like I said, of course, the local residents, they are affected greatly. But people who, for example, do not live near the bridge, they may feel the impact, right, as a result of the KeyBridge collapse. So we also want to reach out to those people as well. And specifically, we employed a geo-boosted social media post method. And then we can target the particular people in particular counties or cities. And then we also leverage the e-newsletters to target certain areas and certain groups of people that are very likely to be affected by the KeyBridge collapse. Yes.
One of the challenges of collecting that kind of data through online formats, as you described, is sort of separating the signal from the noise. How
Yeah.
did you go about doing that? How do you make sure that the responses that you obtain are
Yeah.
valid and usable for the broader scope of your study?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a complicated question. I think I can offer some of the method that I use throughout this research to make sure that the responses that we use for subsequent analysis are valid. So I think the first thing is that we want to make sure that the questionnaire that we design is customized enough that can reflect the actual challenges that the targeted population or target communities are facing. So for example, for the KeyBridge collapse, we included questions about their rerouting behavior. For example, like which of all those 4 or maybe more options you are using to navigate the traffic after the KeyBridge collapse, or are there any potential impact that on your daily lives as a result of the KeyBridge? So that I think we believe that if you customize the questionnaire specific enough, the participant may be more willing to offer their genuine thoughts and opinions on what's going on. So because the questionnaire show that you care, so the participants may want to offer their more genuine thoughts. And the second way is I believe is to make sure that the distribution methods and the channels are also tailored enough to make sure that the people we want to target get targeted, right? So I think this is, like I said, easier said than done. And oftentimes this involves trials and error type of experiment. And this is actually exactly what we did at the beginning. So we spent some time at the beginning, we tried a bunch of different ways, and then we distribute a flyer to different locations, and then we also tried other ways. But like I said, in the end, we sort of decided to use a combination of the in-person survey distribution as well as the online survey distribution, which based on our experience, yielded the best results. But again, I think for different survey, because they are different, the target population are different. I think it is important to do some test runs at the beginning to make sure like which methods perform the best. And lastly, I would say that it's definitely like you mentioned to carefully analyze and look at the received responses. To make sure that the responses that we include for subsequent analysis are valid. So the thing is, oftentimes because the survey responses, they are not that complicated, right? We do not have a lot of like math models or statistical models, so we can just read them and then see whether or not the person who are responding to our survey, knows what his or her is talking about. So for example, we actually received some responses that just by looking at it, it actually indicates that the participant is basically completely unaware about, the Key Bridge or the Baltimore traffic or even the number of digits in the zip code in the US. So those type of responses cases combined together basically indicates that, that response may not be that useful. Right. So I think it is important that we remove those type of responses in subsequent analysis. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, well, I really appreciate you giving us that look inside the methods that you're using for this study. To my eyes, it looks incredibly rigorous, so I congratulate you on that. With the necessary caveat that this study is still ongoing, as you read some of these responses, are there any obvious sort of basic high-level themes that are percolating up in those responses?
Basically, like you said, also like I mentioned, this is an ongoing effort. We are still receiving responses as we move forward. But I think I can briefly share with everyone some of the themes that we can basically summarize from the survey response that we got so far. I think the first one is some of the survey participants reported that their travel time and their commute time has increased a bit as a result of the Key Bridge collapse. So this is also understandable because, like I said, there are more than 30,000 vehicle trips carried by the Key Bridge before it collapsed. But now, because of its collapse, those traffic needs to be diverted somewhere, and which basically may create congestions to the nearby areas. I think that the second theme is that because of the increase in the travel time, some survey participants mentioned that they may also need to readjust their day-to-day lives, in response to the Key Bridge collapse and also to the increase in the travel time. So, for example, they may cancel unnecessary trips and so on and so forth, so that to make their life easier.
All right, great. I think we're about to move away from some of the sort of more direct questioning about our suite of studies related to the bridge. And while we have this sort of halftime, I'd just like to remind everybody again that if you have questions, whether it's about the bridge studies or about Dr. Yang's expertise more broadly, I encourage you to use the Q&A feature to ask those questions. And I'll just again point to the audience survey that we have posted in the chat. You can take a look at that after the show if you like. And so with that, I guess, Dee, I'd like to zoom out just a little bit and sort of maybe harken back to that earlier question about sort of your initial reactions and how you were thinking about your role as a researcher in response to periods of crisis. So, on sort of like a more abstract level, like what do you think is the proper role of academics during times of crisis or danger or threat when not just the data is perishable, but people's livelihoods, people's lives? Like how should academics respond in times of crisis?
This is a great question. So because I'm from a transportation background, so I think I can maybe comment a little bit from a transportation perspective. I know for different areas, the responses can be different. I know you're asking about the role of academia, but first of all, I want to say that when this unexpected events or potential disaster happen in transportation, I think it is very important for people in academia as well as our colleagues from transportation agencies and transportation industry. I mean, as well as the people who are affected by these events to work together so that we can better navigate the aftermath of the events. So, for example, in academia, I would say that we have certain expertise, for example, in data collection analysis and also modeling, so on and so forth. But I would say that compared to transporting agencies and in our industry partners, I think the thing is that people in academia, we may not have a lot of like day-to-day experience compared to the people in agency industry or all those people that are actually affected by the Key Bridge. So basically, this day-to-day experience are very valuable. So that's why I said that I think it would be good that we work together to navigate the aftermath of this. So basically, and I think just to circle back to the role of academia, I would say that when these type of unexpected events happen, the professors, researchers, students, and staff in academia, basically we can provide, I believe, some essential support to transportation agencies and other relevant parties. So, for example, for our NSF Rapid Award, the main goal is to collect data, and not only just one type of data, but it's actually a multifaceted type of data that the data will be made available to public after the project ends. So I think it will not only benefit the researchers, but also benefit people from various industries, so that to see what is going on after the disaster and after the event. And yeah, again, I really believe that this close collaboration between academia, transport agencies, industry partners, and also the people who are affected, can really make a difference and get us through this type of events. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think that's a great takeaway that partnerships with stakeholders across the industry, whether that's in the private sector or in government, are really necessary so that we can be accessible with objective information in times when the demand for that information is very high. That's a great way of looking at it, I think. When we've had these conversations in the past about this particular suite of projects, I've been really impressed by the sort of historical lens that you've taken when looking at this event. How do you think about how we derive sort of best practices from disasters that happened in the past? In your case, again, perhaps from a transportation perspective. I'm also kind of curious what you think is unique about this particular disaster. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. Yeah, this is another great question. So first of all, let me say that we actually don't want more disasters to happen. Okay. But I think I strongly support the fact that we really need to learn from every disaster and every event that happened, so that we can be better prepared for the future. And the thing is, like you asked, I think there are several potential uniqueness about this Key Bridge collapse. And the first one is, like I mentioned, we have more than 30,000 vehicle trips that are carried by the bridge before it collapsed, right? So this is a large amount of traffic. And the second thing is that, because the Key Bridge is a long bridge, the construction period may not be, for example, like in a month, right? So it may take some time to get the bridge reconstructed, which may or may not affect the local traffic. But I think we can do more research to see. And another point is that there are several alternative routes, but like I mentioned before, the 695, 895, I-95. And local traffic in Baltimore City. But the thing is, the Key Bridge collapse will put more pressure on those roads. And this is also one of the unique point of this event. And the lastly is that, I think based on regulations, we know that for the two tunnels, the I-895 and I-695, there are certain type of restrictions regarding what types of trucks that can use that bridge. So for example, all those hazardous material, the hazmat trucks, they may not be able to use the tunnels, which create additional hurdles, basically for the truckers to navigate through the impacted area. So I think with this uniqueness of this incident, I think it is very important to fully investigate the traffic impact. So, and then what we're currently trying to do is, I think, like I said, with the collecting of this data, it is basically the first step. And the second step is that we can leverage the data we collected to see, how, the traffic impacts are basically happen after the Key Bridge collapse. And also, in addition, I just want to mention that because this is not just a local event. Like I said, the impact is largely go beyond Baltimore. It's basically a regional or even a countrywide event. So I sincerely hope that the research findings. I mean, not only the research we're doing in Morgan, but also the research conducted by other brilliant researchers, not only in the country but also around the world, can be combined together and then used as examples and potential benchmarks for future research.
Absolutely, that sounds extremely practical. I'm thinking now about whether or not there may be a tension in the series of studies that you are collecting. That is, specifically, you have some studies focusing on identifying and modeling and hopefully improving traffic throughput, and you have others focused explicitly on like local community needs. And I think as transportation professionals, we often see a sort of tension between maximizing traffic throughput and speaking directly to like local community needs. I think a perfect example would be like the fact that we don't let hazardous materials through the tunnels. That certainly hurts traffic throughput, but that's a safety concern for the citizens of Baltimore that needs to be addressed. So maybe at just like a broad level, how do you think about this challenge of balancing traffic throughput and the needs of the local community, whether that be related to safety or otherwise?
Yeah. Right. So I think I agree with your point. I think in transportation research, I think we tend to, maybe focus more on the modeling, either simulation modeling or statistical modeling a lot. But actually, transportation affects our day-to-day lives, right? So there's another side of the story is that, the people who use our transport system, what they feel and what they, what their opinions are about our transportation system. So, like you mentioned, I think right now, at the Smarter Center and NTC, we have several projects. I think one of which also I mentioned at the beginning is that we are trying to develop some transportation models to be able to better understand the impact. So specifically, Dr. Mansouri Jihani, the director of our Smarter Center, I think she's leading an effort of developing traffic simulation models to investigate the impact of Key Bridge, and I am also involved in that research. So the main focus of that research is to develop and calibrate traffic simulation models that can characterize the traffic conditions in the areas like near the Key Bridge, and before and after its collapse, right? So after we have this model ready, we can use a model to basically test the feasibility of different types of potential solutions that may help the traffic after Key Bridge collapse, and we can see which one can perform better, right? So, and I think this is basically by developing the traffic simulation models. We are using software, computer, and then things are quantified in terms of traffic volume, turning movement counts, speed, and so on and so forth. So this can be one example about what you mentioned in terms of the modeling and the quantitative aspect. But I think, like I said, there's another aspect with the community needs, right? So it is, I would say that in my opinion, it is definitely difficult to integrate both aspects together. And I totally agree with you that it is important to balance them. So for example, whether or not we can incorporate some of the community responses in our simulation model, like to reflect certain type of either restrictions or feedback or potential solutions that we can test out. And the other thing is I want to mention is that the communities really, and the people who actually use the transport system really knows their needs and their struggles, right? So I think we definitely need to understand those needs and struggles and challenges better before we can report the quantitative results. And Right. So I think this is basically an ongoing research that we need to think about how to balance the quantitative aspects and also the qualitative aspects, yeah, of the traffic impact studies.
Another area of your expertise is artificial intelligence and specifically applications of machine learning techniques to transportation problems. Could you tell us a little bit about how you're applying machine learning techniques to both your survey analysis and how you might apply artificial intelligence techniques to other disaster management topics?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, I think we all know like artificial intelligence, machine learning. I mean, those things they're one of the hottest topics right now, right? I think not only in transportation but also in various type of fields. So I would say I think for the survey responses, I mean, if you think about it, right, the survey responses they are actually, I mean, especially those from open-ended questions, right? Basically, others please specify type of questions, and they can be viewed as natural language, right? Because they are text. So I think it's possible that to leverage like one field in machine learning and artificial intelligence, I mean, to analyze these responses, I think that is the natural language processing techniques, right? So and I think we all have I think we've probably all heard of the ChatGPT. This is also a large language model. Yeah, it's a more advanced model of that. But I think with all of these new techniques, we can better help understand not only just the themes of the responses, but also how the participants feel in their responses. So I mean, for those of you who are not familiar with NLP, it's actually it's a specific field in computer science and artificial intelligence that basically we train the machines to understand and communicate with human languages, right? So I think that this is pretty fascinating. And as far as I can think of, for the machine learning applications in disaster response, so there may be two other aspects that we can use machine learning. The first one is that when we talk about disaster responses, right? I mean, oftentimes we have certain predictive tasks. For example, we may want to predict the traffic volume. We may want to predict the travel speed, the congestion level, so on and so forth. And then with the help of supervised learning, machine learning, we can actually develop models to predict certain type of responses that we want. And another thing, I think with the use of machine learning is that, some of the data that we collected, right? So at the beginning, we may not know what our targets are, right? We may not know the outcome that we want to predict, but we may want to, explore the data a little bit further to see whether or not there are some patterns in the data, right? So I think this is belongs to the pattern analysis. So for example, like with the transportation data, we want to understand whether or not there are different types of congestion levels, whether there are different types of traffic safety risk, categories and so on and so forth. So I think if we want to do that, we can use the unsupervised learning in machine learning to get some insights from the data. Yeah.
I want to draw on some of our audience questions real quick. We have a question about how the bridge reconstruction will affect imports and exports related to or coming into Baltimore City. I think for our purposes, another way to rephrase the question might be for you to tell us a little bit about how you and your colleagues are assessing the economic impact of the Key Bridge collapse, and similarly, what any early findings related to that kind of data collection might be indicating.
Yeah, this is absolutely a great question. So let me say that I think I mentioned for the NSF Rapid Award, there are mainly three aspects. The first one is the traffic mobility data, and the second one is traffic behavior, and the third one is logistic and social economic studies. So because at Morgan State, we are not leading the effort of the logistic and social economics, so I think I may not comment a lot on that. But I totally agree with this question that with the bridge collapse and everything, the economic impact, I mean, is huge, right? I mean, we all know that Baltimore Port is a very major port, not only in the East Coast, but maybe in America and around the world. And then a lot of goods are transported in the Baltimore ports, and which was put on hold, right? At least at the beginning of the Key Bridge collapse. And then I think to answer this question requires like more rigorous studies in terms of the logistics, supply chain, and so on and so forth. But I think we are more than happy to report more on that. I mean, after we get more results on that. Yeah.
Well, I'll remind everybody that we still have time to field some questions from the audience as I turn to my last question, which, as always, is what advice would you give to any budding academics, young engineers, or those interested in exploring the sort of frontiers of a new technology like you have?
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think I like the way that you sort of asked this question at the last to every speaker that talks about how to explore the frontiers of technology, because I think in transportation we all know that the transport system is getting smarter. We have the smart cities, a smart mobility concept. I think for me, and thank you for your kind words in terms of saying that I'm also exploring the frontier. But I think the thing is that we are all trying to figure out how these technologies work and how we can help or contribute in terms of to make it better. I think this is a great question, but also a very complicated one. So let me just offer my thoughts and based on my experience. I think when we are exploring, for example, the new technologies, me personally, I strongly believe it is important to understand two things. The first one is how the technology works. And second thing is why it works. So basically the how, is obvious, right? We want to know the process before that we can use it. But I think the second point is like why it works. I think this is what I always tell my students, that because I think if you don't really understand how it works, of course, right now we have so many computer packages, programming packages, so many software. I think it basically makes our life easier in terms of applying those technologies. But in my opinion, if you don't understand how it works, of course you can get the results. But if the results is not good, right, it may be difficult or challenging for you to figure out why and to propose new solutions, right? I believe if you understand why the technology or the method works, you will feel more comfortable or confident in terms of finding out a better solution based on this technology. So, first of all, let me say that I understand the urge of quickly applying a new method and the technology to get a result and publish your work. But I also believe that if you only after you fully understand how and why it works, can you be more confident in terms of writing the paper and doing the research and also to figure out better solutions. Yeah, and then I understand it is sometimes time consuming to understand why, but I believe the effort will be worthwhile. Yeah.
Have the patience to master the fundamentals. There you
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
Dr. Yang, thank you so much for joining us on Transportation Talks.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for having me.